Good morning, everybody. My name's Ryan Harris, and many of you on the call today will know me as the account manager at NoBlue. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be on the first of our series of webinars featuring built for NetSuite products. So today I'm joined on the call by Wayne Crosland, Sales Director at Infinet Cloud, and Tristan Day, who is the General Manager at Infinet Cloud. If anyone has any questions during the webinar, please use the chat option provided. We'll answer any of your questions in the Q&A later on. So I'll now hand you over to Wayne, who will take you through a brief presentation before Tristan gives you an overview of the product.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everybody for attending today. It's quite exciting. So as Ryan said, my name is Wayne Crossland. I look after the UK from a sales perspective, and co-presenting today is our General Manager, Tristan Day. So the format today will be a brief overview of Infinet Cloud, followed by an overview of our live payroll system inside NetSuite. So to start with, just a bit of a high-level overview of our company. So the founders of our company previously worked for NetSuite out of Maidenhead in the UK, way back in the early 2000s. And they identified back then that there was no on-platform payroll solution for NetSuite. So they subsequently formed Infinet Cloud in Australia in 2009 and expanded rapidly into the New Zealand and UK jurisdictions. So we are part of NetSuite's developer network, which is commonly referred to as the SDN partner channel, and we have been since 2010. In fact, we were one of the original SDN partners. So this means that we are certified, tested, and accountable to NetSuite, and we only work with NetSuite. In 2014, we won the Global SDN Partner of the Year award. Next slide, please, Tristan. So Infinet Cloud is a native application. We're actually part of the NetSuite solution. All of our functionality is accessed through NetSuite, and we take full advantage of the NetSuite unified single database, referencing NetSuite classifications such as department, class, location, as well as interacting with NetSuite time records and various modules such as NetSuite Project Management. So being a native module within NetSuite, we directly interact with the general ledger and the chart of accounts. We create the necessary journal entries using core NetSuite classifications. There is no need to import journals from an external system. We are a finance-based application, and we live within the core NetSuite database. And these are the main reasons we are chosen as a payroll solution for many NetSuite customers. To us, it's more than payroll. It's about providing the visibility and the detail of what would typically be the largest cost within an organization. We see payroll as a strategic business function that allows our customers to make evidence-based decisions based on the data that we produce. Next slide, please, Tristan. So we've been going for 11 years. We've been in the UK since 2013. We're well established, and we have over 650 customers globally. The United Kingdom is a key jurisdiction for us, and we've experienced some rapid growth recently with 22 new customers added last year alone. So one of the reasons why so many customers have chosen us is because of the effort we put into making our customers happy and referenceable. There is no better validation of this, and I will point you to the center of the screen there, which is suiteapp.com. So there's no better validation of this than the number of reviews we have on suiteapp.com. We always encourage our prospective customers to read those references, as many of the journeys that they have undertaken will be very similar to your own. Next slide, please, Tristan. So here are some of our customers in the UK. Now, we're a horizontal application, and we range in size from the smallest, which is 5 employees, up to our largest in the UK, which is Clean Linen Workwear on the right there, who have 1,200 employees paid on a weekly basis and 400 paid on a monthly basis. In fact, Clean Linen is a great example of how a customer has been able to use NetSuite and Infinet Cloud data to calculate the pence per piece to launder an individual item. As you can appreciate, their volumes are in the hundreds of thousands of items laundered each month, and it is paramount that they have the visibility and the detail of their costs, the labour force being the largest. Now, because we are native inside NetSuite, our data, in combination with their other business data, is an integral part of their overall key performance reporting and the underlying calculations. Next slide, please, Tristan. So we have a case study. This is a common NoBlue and Infinet Cloud customer, a company called Eunomia. So Eunomia is an independent consultancy firm, and they help clients achieve a better environmental outcome. So Eunomia needed a new finance system to drive growth and improvements in their execution. NetSuite was selected because it had financials, CRM, and project management all within the single unified platform, but most importantly, a single database. Being a consultancy firm, the largest cost within the business was the payroll. So they had outgrown their existing payroll system, and they needed to improve on the reporting and analysis to gain a better understanding of their labor costs within the wider context of their business. So next slide, please, Tristan. So Infinet Cloud was the perfect choice to replace their old payroll system. Now, because we are native to NetSuite, the users were already familiar with the interface, which we'll see in the demo shortly, but the real benefit was having our data available alongside other financial data within the core NetSuite system. And the outcome was we were able to reduce a large amount of inefficiencies and manual processes that existed with the old payroll system. This is a common theme across all of our customers. And we were able to also provide the detailed reporting that they needed in order to drive their growth and improve their execution. So last slide before we get on to the live demonstration, just to recap, we're a native NetSuite finance-driven payroll solution referencing the single unified NetSuite database. And this is what enables payroll to be used as a strategic business function. So now the fun part, I'll hand you over to Tristan for a live demo.
Thank you, Wayne, and good morning, everyone. I am just going to switch over to my browser and then I will resume sharing. Okay, so what we're going to see today is our built for NetSuite native application. We are, of course, a HMRC accredited solution, and you can see our listing on the paid4gov.uk website. The dashboard and what you see from the user interface, as Wayne mentioned, should be familiar to you all. This is our own center, so as part of our bundles, we are going to be installing our own roles, our own capabilities, and of course, our own payroll center as well. And it is the central point to process and analyze your payroll in line with normal NetSuite practices. We want it to be as seamless as possible, and we're going to take advantage of the single data source. But one of the biggest changes we see in behavior with our customers is that we start building a payroll throughout the month and trying to avoid that mad month-end period of data entry or liaising with a bureau and rushing to the end, because everything gets stored up towards the end. Because it's in NetSuite, we can start adding things to that as we go through. And of course, the most obvious benefit to that, as Wayne mentioned, is the to-the-penny analysis that we can offer. Now, from a payroll perspective, of course, we want to make sure that we are adhering to our obligations, making sure that we've got the appropriate enrollment records for our employees, making sure that we're dealing with any tax code notifications, student loan start-stops, etc. But once all that has been done, we're always then asking ourselves the second question, which we have to do as part of being on board the finance system. Question number one, what is the desired output from an employee perspective? Question number two, what is the output that we are looking for from an employer perspective? So contained within the bundle, we put in a lot of baseline reports to help us get to both of those. These are just NetSuite safe searches, so they are entirely customizable as per your own requirements. We can just use these as a baseline, and if you do have the capabilities within your business to do NetSuite safe searches, then we absolutely encourage and we'll show you where to go to use those for your data. Once that has all been done, of course, we can then look at the other dashboard reporting, whether it is a payroll scorecard from a finance perspective, and this is very much a finance heavy scorecard that we have in here, where we're talking about total gross pays, commissions, how many hours total have been done this month, this quarter, average cost. Maybe we want to know a cost per meter squared of our dispatch areas. As Wayne mentioned, Clean Linen do a pence per piece laundered. It might be a pence per piece picked and fulfilled using item fulfillments as the metrics within NetSuite. So once all that data is in there and we have an understanding of the outputs and the kind of decisions that our customers need to make, it is very expected that we can then move to actually having these metrics and having them as the heartbeat of the business. For the purposes of today, I'm going to be using a subset of demo users. There's 5 users on here, which is well within the capabilities from a numbers perspective. In fact, our largest customer globally is in Australia, and they pay 3,500 people on a weekly basis. This subset is going to be used as the example. As you would expect, we can handle the different pay types. We've got the different tax codes, including the Scottish and now coming in with the Welsh tax codes and all those sorts of things. And as part of our compliance and as part of our commitment to the UK jurisdiction, any changes that do occur from a legislative perspective, those are on us. Because we are not only going to be doing 2 updates every single year to make sure that we comply with the NetSuite rollout, but also we've got the budget that we need to adhere to. So things like coming from April, IR35, previously obviously reference rate for annual leave calculations and those sorts of things, those are all on us. We'll get a managed bundle update pushed into your account along with the how-tos and notifications on how to actually use that. So before we get to the outputs from an employer perspective and from that reporting, we have to look at the employee, which is the central actor for all things payroll. And where we can, we are reusing standard NetSuite fields. This is just the standard NetSuite employee record. We're going to look at the first name, last name. We're going to look at the address, gender, birth date, hire date. All of these things are required from an RTI perspective. They already exist in NetSuite, so we're not going to duplicate them. Where you will see a difference in this form versus what you might be used to at the moment is the fact that we have added all of our custom functionality onto here using custom fields, and we've obviously streamlined the form to make it more in tune with what you need from a payroll perspective. So these first 5 tabs down here belong to us, and they're all controlled with a very high level of permissions and security because we obviously do appreciate that payroll is very sensitive data. So depending on what your needs are for this particular employee, full-time or part-time, whether they're paid an annual salary or an hours per week or an hourly rate, we're going to give you a bank file, which we'll look at in a moment. We support the payroll states for different bank holidays. And we're going to be getting an email, an encrypted email with a password to the employee's personal email address. This could alternatively be downloaded from the NetSuite Employee Center, so it doesn't have to be emailed. If they do have the Employee Center, then we have that exposed in there as well. We're going to be in the UK. We have the ability to cater for all manner of different combinations of working pattern, what we call a leave request working week. And you'll see here that obviously we are talking about leave. We're not going to be looking at that today, but included in the bundle as part of our functionality is the ability to manage, to have leave management enabled, which allows for balance managed leave requests, approvals, and all those sorts of things. So if you would like to follow up with that in the future, please do let Ryan know. This employee is on a salary, but of course we also support wages, and we also support the 0-hour contract concept, where we're only paying for time that the employee has actually worked, which would be to pay from NetSuite time. So if they aren't working, then obviously they're not going to get anything there as well. And where that time comes from can be a NetSuite timesheet. It can, of course, also be imported. We are using all of the standard NetSuite capabilities to support that as well. Auto enrollment was a big thing to be rolled out a few years ago, and we support all of the requirements around there, including the earnings trigger, banded earnings, the age assessment, and all those sorts of things. So we have a solution that will be doing the derived calculations so that you can then upload those into your pension provider. Now, of course, we're starting to get into this posting info section to talk about where we want to put things in the general ledger. Most commonly, we will see customers have certainly expense accounts for salaries. Some may have salary cost of goods accounts. Some may have a specific account for directors, and indeed some may have other expense codes for R&D and those sorts of things. So we have a very finite and granular control over where we are posting things in the general ledger as a home bucket, which we can also look to do post-processing on if we need to get even more advanced within your chart of accounts. And on this record, we're looking, as we come down to the bottom, we're starting to look at the remuneration. This may be a full audit trail of everything over time, along with all the changes, along with our base salary and other things, where we will also calculate pro rata calculations as well. So if you do have a mid-period starter or leaver, or someone you want to backdate some pay to and those sorts of things, we can absolutely support those scenarios. We can handle loan repayments and drawdowns on a balance to make sure that we're recovering season ticket loans or cycle to work or all those sorts of things, as well as supporting payroll benefits in kind, P11D, and those associated compensation metrics as well. We do want to link as much as we possibly can on the employee record because it is obviously the central place. So we're also linking our pay slips and other things in there as well. So once we actually have our employee, we want to make sure that we've got our appropriate tax codes, national insurance numbers. You can send national insurance verifications through our system, which is very important and has been very useful to our customers over the last few months, because the national insurance number is what's driving all of the claims and identity requirements for the coronavirus job retention scheme. And our student loans, postgrad loans, apprentices. We're going to run logic on our national insurance categories for age-based things to help reduce any issues or errors that may occur from the initial setup. We're also going to create the annual P60 for all of the employees if they're employed on the 5th of April. We also do the P11D and other things. We're not going to be going into detail on those today, but again, if you do have P11D requirements, benefits in kind, payroll benefits in kind, more than happy to tailor a demonstration for you on those topics. To us, pensions is, we call them superannuation. That's our Australian heritage. So this is where we're going to be looking at when they were enrolled, their categories and all those sorts of things. And we mentioned leave earlier. I'm just going to briefly glance at that and move on. Again, if you want more detail on that, we're happy to pick that up. The payroll bank details, we've had our EFT generation capabilities much longer than NetSuite, so we still use our own, and we will have a look at some of those as we go through the pay run process. The other bit that I want to touch on before we look back into initiating a pay run is the enrollment record. Every employee needs one. Not having a new starter declaration is as much of an enrollment record as actually having one. And where you are putting in a new starter checklist or a P45 or all those sorts of things, this information will get set back into the employee record and will then also guide on what the tax code and the default tax code may well be to try and, again, make sure that we're getting things set up correctly. Okay, so we've got our employee created. They've got the remuneration, they've got their new starter checklist. I've added some notes into the processing for each employee, so we have a little bit of a narrative that we want to go into initiating the payroll. I also have some one-off payments that I need to process. These can be created, by workflow. You can enter them manually, you can import them. Most commonly, one-off payments we would see as perhaps annual bonuses that might be agreed each year, as long as they can come into the system via CSV at the minimum, or if we can calculate that stuff within NetSuite and actually have that created directly. Those are going to sit there ready for us to actually go in and start doing our processing. So once all those are in place, we can then move towards initiating our pay run. We are fully One World compliant, and we can also support where companies need to have different currencies within their general ledger as well. We can obviously do everything in pounds, but then if that needs to be posted using your journals and your spot rates, then we can do that as well. For the purposes of today, because we've built the pay run up over time, we're going to be jumping straight to the review and approval step. I've filtered out my pay group, so I've just got my 5 employees here, so I can have a brief overview of everything that's going along here. Of course, I can also filter by department, class, and location if I need to. So once I hit submit, that then brings me to my pay run, and I've created my pay slips. I've started to see some taxable income has been created. We're now getting towards the point where we're reviewing all of the information that we need for our employee outputs. And that then brings us to being able to actually look at the payslip record. It is a NetSuite record. It is entirely referenceable by your save search criteria and your scorecards and your KPIs, obviously assuming that you do have those permissions. And this is where we're starting to sum our gross pay information. We're looking at what our deductions are, what our statutory payments are. We're looking at our earnings for national insurance and our earnings for pension. But it all is driven by the payslip details, as we have down here. This employee has obviously got an awful lot going on. And as much as when you've been using the system a while, we would love everyone to do everything just on the payslip and just using the payslip details, everybody loves a good PDF. So, which is something else we have a lot of control on. And we've taken an approach with our software to implement as much best practice as we can. But we also know, particularly with NetSuite customers, that there are going to be specific requirements that may require this tweaking. So, you know, if you do want to manage your payslip templates and those sorts of things, then you have the capability to do so, because you might want a payslip that looks, you know, fairly straightforward and fairly simple. Or you may want something that is a little bit more nuanced and actually have broken down into base salaries, a breakout box with our payroll benefits in kind and the deductions set differently with a bit more information at the bottom. Some messaging can also be entered in there because that can all be controlled by yourself. So once we are into the point where we have looked at our pay slips, we can add employees to the pay run if we need to. Similarly, we can delete a pay slip from the pay run. So we don't want to be in that situation where we're having to roll back 100 people pay run just because we've got one person that needs something correcting, or there's some unknown that needs to be processed. If that's the case, we can just remove that employee from the pay run, pay everybody else, and just do that pay run for an individual alone if you need to. Because the way our license works is that we don't care how many times you pay someone in a calendar month, we just license on the basis of how many individual people you are paying in that calendar month basis. And they are not named people either. You could have 100 people in one month and 100 people in the next month. It matters not to us. It's just that number of people that you are actually paying. And it allows us to add things and metrics and talk to you about what is important from your reporting. You know, do we need to sum up in all of our employer costs to put into a report? Do we need to be looking at specific values that are summing in? Is there some logic that needs to be applied? Do you need to spread your apprenticeship levy costs across all of your classifications, which of course you don't know until you've actually finished the period? And all those sorts of questions that we look at from a cost allocations perspective. And that may well look in the first instance as just a straightforward pay summary, which we can have a look and get some context and look at whether we've got a tax code change in the system and any of the other narrative that actually needs to come in here. It is, again, I stress, just a NetSuite save search. It's all on the NetSuite database. I've not been anywhere else apart from NetSuite right now. So that skill set that you have within the business to really make the reporting fly and look at your data is going to serve you very, very well when you're using our system. Once we are happy with those, with the payments and with the pay slips, I can now move to my approved pay slips. We do give an indication of the variance that is available from a net and a gross perspective, but again, we can report on that in more detail using a save search if we need to. We do support all the major banks. So, you know, we've got Barclays in there, we've got HSBC, NatWest. We're starting to get more and more American banks online as well, Wells Fargo, Silicon Valley, etc. And this is something that we take on board ourselves to make sure works for you is one of the very early steps that would be part of any implementation to make sure that you have a file that can just be downloaded, uploaded into your bank to remove and reduce the human intervention that may be required to make all that work. So once I submit and approve that, it will then move to an approved stage. This will include all of the audit trail and system notes and everything else that we've come used to from NetSuite. So we know who did what, when they did it, and all those sorts of things. And it also allows us to hang the full payment submissions and all those sorts of things off it as well. But most importantly, we want to look at our journals. The journals are linked here in the middle column. The EFT file that you would want to download there will be available here as well. You would have a single PDF that would include all of the pay slips and everything else in there as well. But of course, they can also be emailed, downloaded, as I mentioned earlier. So from a journals perspective, I've used the most common configuration for journal posting that we see in our customer base, which is to group by the nominal code, department class, location. We have a plethora of options in terms of how this is configured. We can also support posting to custom segments. We can support posting to your custom transaction, entering data in the custom transaction columns and all those sorts of things as well. But at its very core, we're creating this home bucket where we are going to post all of these costs against those groupings that I just mentioned. We've got some things that are going into our cost of goods. We've got some things going into our expense, etc. Any liabilities, any vendors that are in there, we're going to tag those in the name as well, so that that can automatically fall into your vendor management. We do have the ability to pay vendors using our bank file, so that can go out as part of net wages. And in the UK, the most common use for that is where there are court orders and other statutory deductions, earnings of arrestment orders, etc., that we just want to get straight off to the courts as soon as that has come out from net. We do have one customer that uses it to pay HMRC, but seeing as you don't have to pay that normally until the 21st of the following month, they are most definitely an outlier. The vast majority will let that fall into an accounts payable process. So that will create our home bucket and our initial posting journal. Because we are also doing the payment journal as well, we are then in a position where we can actually do the debit on the liability, credit the bank, and have all of that as a closed loop from a journals and posting perspective. The other bits that we also see from a reporting perspective is we have the baseline for PAPDIS, which is the pension report. This is again just a baseline, so we download and upload for our pension providers. Although what we also will see is a number of different various searches and formats that we have for Royal London, for Scottish Widows, and all those sorts of things. All the pension providers are currently accepting CSVs, and that's how we solve that particular communication. Once we are at the point that the pay run is done, we then have our RTI requirements. So again, we're going to close the loop on this. This is the first and only time that we have seen today where I'm actually going to do something that is not going to happen within the NetSuite database and within the NetSuite system, because we're going to look at our RTIs. We can have a quick review of the data. We can click submit, which will then send that information off to HMRC. This is then going to come back to us with a successful poll and submission complete. What we also get here is the GovTalk message. If you ever have had to talk to HMRC about data that they are displaying, this GovTalk message, this correlation ID, and the fact that you have the raw information available to you that was actually submitted to the government is a key driver to making sure that you can maintain good, clean data and have that reflect in your liability report at HMRC. And that liability report that we actually would then look at would sit in the P32 report. So what we're looking for here is this total due liability on a per month basis, matching to the penny with what you are actually going to be paying to them, because if it doesn't, we actually then want to see that. The final point from an RTI and a per period perspective is to create the employer payment summary. This is where we will take care of any statutory recoverables for maternity, paternity, shared parental, etc., as well as any apprenticeship levy claim, whether you need to claim for employment allowance if you've got under £100,000 of employer NI liability, and all those other obligations as well. This does not need submitting because there isn't enough of the data to actually go into it. If we did, it would work exactly the same as the FPS with our nice green box that actually polled that and brought all that information in. So once we have got to the employer payment summary, that completes the payroll processing for the monthly period. As I mentioned, you might do adjustments. Yes, we want to avoid them, but unfortunately, with the best will in the world, they are inevitable. You may have frequencies of weekly or fortnightly to go with your monthly. Again, that's absolutely fine, and we have many customers that use multiple frequencies within the system, and it may be that they have shared PAYE schemes and those sorts of things, all of which we are familiar with, and those are when we are looking at splitting apprenticeship levy allowances and all those sorts of things. So we've built a system that obviously is a finance first approach. It is the finance department that are the biggest champions of what we see and what we do, because we are driving that real-time data and metrics into the general ledger and into the reporting. But we get really positive feedback from a payroll processing perspective as well. Yes, we do come often into environments where NetSuite is also being rolled out at the same time. So there is always that challenge of change, but it's something that even to this day will continue to get us the high reviews and customer satisfaction that is the goal of not only as a business, but for the software and the solution as well. That concludes the pay run process that I wanted to show you today. So on that note, I thank you for your time, and I will hand back to Ryan for finish.
Thanks very much, everyone, for your questions. I'll just start from the top. So the first question we have is, can you go live mid-year?
Yes, we can. We have the ability to do year-to-date migrations and bring that year-to-date information in. Any go live that is within 2 periods of the start of the year is effectively a new year implementation. Our implementation approach does mandate parallel comparison of 2 periods against your prior system. So anything up to June or July as a go live still classes as a new year, but we have go lives. We've had companies go live in March because they had no other choice. It's not optimal because it's so close to April, but yes, we do.
Okay, great, thank you. Where is your support team based?
The support team based is in the UK. And we also have obviously a larger team in Australia, which is where the developers are.
How long does a typical Infinet Cloud implementation take?
So obviously the usual caveats around complexity and size and everything else. But in terms of elapsed time, we would look to complete any project, regardless of size, within 12 weeks from start to finish.
Will this software take care of all the journals I currently need to import from my third-party system?
Indeed. I'm not expecting that there will be any financial imports or manipulation required to get that initial home bucket that we were looking at a moment ago. So no, the days of importing journals and trying to manipulate those to fit the general ledger are truly over. You know, even to the point where we have post-processing steps, which we haven't looked at today, to reallocate things as well, turn into a very seamless 6-click process.
Do I need additional licenses to use your software?
You do not. To process the software, it is, sorry, to process a payroll, you are just adding a role to your existing full access license. If you did want your staff to be downloading their payslips from the employee center and they did not have any other NetSuite license, then yes, an employee center license might be appropriate. There are obviously other things we can look at on that as well. But to process the payroll, I mean, Wayne mentioned Clean Linen at the start. You know, they've got 1,600 employees in total. I think they've only got about 30 or 40 licenses because it's a primarily finance system and function.
Oh, that's great. Last couple of questions. So I currently use a third-party HR system. How would this work in conjunction with that?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to say on that worst case scenario, because we do this with customers that have Bamboo and a few other like Kronos as HR systems, would be a CSV import on a weekly or monthly or however often made sense basis. Once we have that mapped out of the HR system, then it can be brought into NetSuite. Some logic can be run on it. Again, I mean, Clean, they use Kronos. You know, they're managing 1,600 employees. 1,200 of them are, they have a lot of churn. And their weekly synchronization process is done via CSV, and it takes about 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Finally, we currently outsource our payroll. What is the biggest benefit you find from moving your payroll in-house?
So most commonly, the comment we get is we have just processed a payroll, including all the journals, done all the reporting, finished everything off, knowing exactly what we've done, and we've done it in more often than not less time than it takes to go backwards and forwards with a bureau to just approve the pay run, and then after that they've got to go and do all the journals.
Perfect. That's all the questions we have so far. So we're finished up 20 minutes early, but I'll give you all back the gift of time. So Tristan, if you go on to the final slide, please. Great. So if anyone has any further questions or wants to arrange a personalized demonstration, for example, the lead management, please do just let me know. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today. As mentioned earlier, this is the first in a series of webinars we shall be running. The next webinar will feature ADRA, who are a global leading financial close and reconciliation software. And this will take place on the 8th of September at 2 p.m. So if anyone's looking to simplify their financial close reconciliation processes and empower their teams, please just send me an email and I'll send an invitation out to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.